The exhibition. Federal Primax Graysen's silver fur bristled as he stared at the crude sketches before him. The human delegation had submitted their weapon designs for the upcoming Galactic Weapons exhibition, and each diagram looked more primitive than the last. His third eye twitched with barely contained disdain. Kinetics, he muttered, the word leaving a bitter taste in his mouth. They want to showcase kinetics at the most prestigious weapons exhibition in the known galaxy. His assistant, Zalor, a Zist whose iridescent wings caught the light of the three suns streaming through the office windows, clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. The humans have shown remarkable adaptability, Primax. Their colonies on the frontier. Their illegal colonies, Graysen interrupted, his fur rippling with irritation. Barely habitable rocks that no civilized species would waste time on. Nevertheless, Zalor continued, his antennae twitching in what Graysen had learned was amusement, they've managed to defend those colonies against some of our most notorious outlaws. Without advanced shields. Without nullifiers. Without plasma weapons. Graysen's eyes narrowed. The Zist had been pushing this point for weeks, ever since the humans had submitted their application. Yes, there had been reports from the frontier, troubling reports about outlaw bands being systematically eliminated. Clean kills, they said. Precise. Professional. And always the same signature, small metal projectiles, accelerated to impossible speeds. Primitive weapons for primitive beings, Graysen declared, but there was less certainty in his voice than before. He'd reviewed the footage from Kental Station himself, watching a single human systematically eliminate Brill Azure and his entire crew, their nullifiers useless against the antiquated but lethal weapons. The exhibition committee expects your decision by tomorrow's rise of the first sun, Zalor reminded him. The other Primax have already rejected their applications. Graysen stroked his carefully maintained silver fur, a habit that helped him think. The exhibition was his domain, his crowning achievement in a career spanning 3 centuries. Every 5 years, the greatest weapons manufacturers in the Federal United Worlds gathered to showcase their latest innovations. Plasma casters that could melt through battleship armor, shield generators that could withstand solar flares, nullifiers that could selectively disable every powered weapon in a 10-kilometer radius. And now the humans wanted to show off their toys, metal tubes that used chemical explosions to launch chunks of refined ore. But those crude weapons had done what no other technology had managed, they'd bypassed nullifiers completely. The implications were troubling. Tell me about their chief designer, Graysen commanded, pulling up the holographic profile. This. Sarah Chen. Zalor's wings rustled as he accessed his data crystal. Graduated from something called the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Specialized in what humans call electromagnetic acceleration systems. Spent 15 years developing weapons for their largest nation-state before founding her own company. Chen Advanced Weapons Systems focuses primarily on what they call railgun technology. Railguns? Graysen's middle eye focused on the human woman's image. She looked unremarkable, small, like all humans, with dark hair streaked with gray and eyes that seemed to carry both determination and exhaustion. More primitive propulsion. Not exactly, Zalor said, and there was an edge to his clicking that made Graysen's fur stand on end. Traditional human kinetics use chemical propellants. Railguns use electromagnetic forces to accelerate projectiles to velocities that. He paused, mandibles working. That rival our most advanced plasma weapons. Graysen's attention snapped fully to his assistant. Impossible. Without quantum stabilizers and zero-point energy taps, no weapon could. They don't need them, Zalor interrupted, a breach of protocol that showed how excited he was. The principles are entirely different. No energy weapons, no plasma containment, no nullifier vulnerability. Just pure kinetic force, achieved through electromagnetic acceleration. Graysen leaned back in his gravity chair, all 3 eyes fixed on Sarah Chen's image. The human looked back at him with an expression he couldn't quite read, was it confidence? Defiance? Or something else entirely? The exhibition was meant to showcase the pinnacle of galactic warfare technology. Having humans there, with their crude weapons and primitive understanding of physics, would be embarrassing. His rivals would mock him. The other Primarchs would question his judgment. But if these railguns could truly do what Zalor suggested, if they could achieve plasma weapon velocities while completely bypassing nullifier technology, then whoever controlled their development would have an advantage that no amount of advanced energy weapons could match. Send a message to the human delegation, Grayson decided, his fur settling into smooth patterns of satisfaction. Inform them that their application has been provisionally accepted, pending a live demonstration of their technology. Zalor's wings buzzed with surprise. The other Primarchs will object. Strongly. Let them, Grayson said, his eyes still fixed on Sarah Chen's image. The exhibition is my domain. My decision is final. As his assistant left to compose the message, Grayson began planning. The humans would need to be carefully managed, their technology examined and documented. If their weapons proved as effective as the Frontier report suggested, arrangements would need to be made. Patents would need to be acquired. Research rights would need to be negotiated. And if the humans proved difficult about sharing their technology? Well, there were ways to handle primitive species who didn't understand their place in the galaxy. The first sun was setting, casting long shadows through Grayson's office. In the fading light, Sarah Chen's holographic eyes seemed to gleam with their own inner fire. Grayson dismissed the image with a wave of his hand, but the memory of that steady gaze stayed with him. The humans were coming to his exhibition. And one way or another, their weapons technology would soon belong to more worthy hands. Part 1 continues with the build-up to the exhibition, introducing key characters and establishing the political tensions between various alien species. It delves deeper into Sarah Chen's background and her company's development of advanced railgun technology, while also exploring Grayson's machinations to acquire the technology for himself. The section ends with the arrival of the human delegation at the exhibition, setting the stage for the dramatic events to come. The demonstration. The exhibition center's demonstration arena sprawled across 3 square kilometers of Centauri Prime's most valuable real estate. Its transparent dome, reinforced with quantum-stabilized force fields, sparkled in the light of the system's 3 suns. Sarah Chen stood at the observation window of her assigned preparation chamber, her weathered hands clasped behind her back, watching alien dignitaries file into their protected viewing boxes. "They're all here to mock us," Marcus Webb, her chief engineer, muttered as he ran another diagnostic on their primary demonstration unit. The railgun's sleek housing hummed softly, its electromagnetic coils cooling after their latest calibration sequence. "Did you see how that bug-looking thing in the corridor skittered away when we were bringing in the equipment?" Sarah allowed herself a small smile. That bug-looking thing was a Zist diplomatic attaché. "And they don't mock what they fear, Marcus." "Fear?" Marcus looked up from his diagnostic panel, his dark skin gleaming with sweat despite the chamber's climate controls. "We're the technological equivalent of cavemen to these people. Their smallest ships could probably vaporize Earth from orbit. And yet," Sarah turned to face her colleague, "they're all very interested in our primitive weapons. Particularly after what happened on Kental Station." Marcus grimaced. The incident that had put human kinetic weapons on the galactic map wasn't something they liked to discuss. A single human operative, armed with primitive ballistic weapons, had eliminated one of the most notorious outlaw crews in the frontier sectors. The fact that they'd done it despite the outlaws' nullifier technology had sent shockwaves through the Federal United Worlds. Speaking of interested parties, Sarah nodded toward the door, where Zalor, the Zist assistant to Federal Primarchs Grayson, had just entered. His iridescent wings were folded tight against his carapace, a sign of respect or anxiety, Sarah wasn't sure which. The Primax requests a private meeting before the demonstration. Zaller's mandibles clicked rapidly as he spoke, his translator converting the sounds into crisp, accented English. He has some concerns about safety protocols. Sarah exchanged a glance with Marcus. They'd been expecting this. The demonstration will proceed exactly as outlined in our submitted documentation, she said firmly. All safety measures have been approved by the exhibition committee. Zaller's antennae twitched. The Primax insists. Then the Primax can submit his concerns through official channels, Sarah replied, turning back to the observation window. We begin in 30 minutes. I suggest everyone be in their designated positions by then. The Zist's wings rustled, definitely agitation this time, but he left without further argument. Marcus let out a low whistle. You sure it's wise to antagonize them? These aliens aren't exactly known for their patience with primitive species. Sarah's reflection in the window smiled grimly. They're not used to primitives who can fight back. Power up the secondary systems. Let's give them a show they'll never forget. The demonstration arena had been configured according to their specifications, multiple target ranges, from 100 meters to 2 kilometers, each protected by increasingly powerful energy shields. The final target was surrounded by the most advanced nullifier field the Federal United Worlds could produce. In the viewing boxes above, Sarah could see representatives from every major species in known space. The mantis-like Zist clustered together, their wings creating rainbow patterns as they shifted position. The massive grotto, their armored bodies decorated with intricate golden patterns denoting their noble houses, occupied entire boxes to themselves. And in the central box, elevated above all others, sat Federal Primax Grayson, his silver fur immaculately groomed, all three of his eyes fixed on the demonstration floor. Primary systems at full charge, Marcus reported. Electromagnetic field stable. Rail integrity at 100%. Sarah nodded, running her hand along the railgun's housing. The weapon represented 15 years of her life, countless failures, and breakthroughs that had fundamentally changed humanity's understanding of physics. It was sleek, efficient, and completely unlike the crude chemical projectile weapons that had protected human colonies in the frontier. Begin recording, she commanded, and their AI system activated, documenting every aspect of what was to come. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored representatives of the Federal United Worlds, her voice carried clearly through the arena's acoustic enhancement field. Thank you for allowing Earth to participate in this prestigious exhibition. She could practically feel the condescension radiating from the viewing boxes. Let them smirk, she thought. Let them underestimate us one last time. Our first demonstration will address the common misconception that kinetic weapons are inherently inferior to energy-based systems, Sarah continued, nodding to Marcus. The railgun hummed to life, its electromagnetic fields becoming visible as a subtle distortion in the air. The target at 100 meters is protected by a standard Corvette-class energy shield, she explained. According to federal specifications, this shield can withstand sustained fire from military-grade plasma weapons. Without further preamble, Sarah triggered the railgun. There was no explosive bang, no chemical propellant, just a sharp crack as the projectile broke the sound barrier, followed instantly by a brilliant flash as it struck the shield. When the light faded, the shield was gone. So was the target. And so was a significant portion of the reinforced wall behind it. A murmur ran through the viewing boxes. Sarah allowed herself a small smile before continuing. The second target, at 500 meters, is protected by a cruiser-class shield array. The projectile velocity will be increased by 50%. Another crack. Another flash. Another destroyed target. With each demonstration, the whispers from the viewing boxes grew louder. By the time they reached the 1-kilometer target, protected by capital ship-grade shields, even the Grotto nobles were leaning forward in their seats. And now, Sarah announced, the final demonstration. This target is protected by the most advanced nullifier field available to the Federal United Worlds. According to your specifications, it should render all weapons, regardless of type or power source, completely inert within its radius. In his elevated box, Primox Grayson leaned forward, all three eyes wide. This was the moment he'd been waiting for, the test that would either confirm the impossible reports from the frontier or expose human technology as the crude toys he believed them to be. Sarah nodded to Marcus, who initiated the final firing sequence. The railgun's hum deepened, electromagnetic fields intensifying as power built in its capacitors. The nullifier field around the target shimmered, its purple-black energy rippling as it detected the weapon's activation. "Fire," Sarah commanded. The crack this time was louder, the projectile's velocity pushing the limits of their current technology. Everyone in the arena watched as it streaked toward the nullifier field. And passed straight through, obliterating the target in a spectacular explosion of kinetic energy. The silence that followed was absolute. Part 2 continues with the immediate aftermath of the demonstration, the reactions of various alien species, and the beginning of Grayson's plot to acquire the technology by any means necessary. It explores the political implications of humans possessing weapons that can bypass nullifier fields, and sets up the conflict that will drive the remaining parts of the story. The Betrayal. Sarah Chen knew something was wrong the moment she entered her quarters aboard the exhibition station. The air held a subtle charge, like the residual energy field after a railgun discharge. Her hand moved instinctively to the small kinetic pistol hidden beneath her jacket, a primitive weapon that had nonetheless kept her alive during 3 attempted corporate takeovers back on Earth. "I wouldn't," came a smooth voice from the shadows. "My security forces have orders to respond with excessive enthusiasm." Federal Primox Grayson stepped into view, his silver fur almost luminescent in the dim light. 2 Grotto warriors flanked him, their armored forms nearly filling the room. Behind them, Sarah could see Zaller, the Zist's wings pulled tight against his carapace in what she now recognized as distress. "Breaking into a delegate's quarters seems beneath your station, Primox," Sarah said calmly, letting her hand fall away from the weapon. "The exhibition has protocols for technology acquisition negotiations." Grayson's third eye twitched in what might have been amusement. "Protocols. Yes, you humans do seem fond of those. Rules and regulations to mask your fundamental inadequacies." "Our inadequate weapons seem to have impressed your audience today," Sarah countered. "The bidding war for manufacturing rights should be interesting." "There will be no bidding war." Grayson gestured, and one of the Grotto warriors moved to block the door. "The Federal United Worlds cannot allow a primitive species to possess technology that bypasses our most advanced defense systems. It would upset the natural order." Sarah's mind raced. Marcus was still in the lab, running post-demonstration diagnostics on their equipment. The rest of her team was scattered throughout the station, celebrating their success. They were vulnerable. "The natural order," she echoed, buying time. "You mean your technological superiority? Your ability to control who has access to advanced weapons?" "Precisely." Grayson's fur rippled in patterns of satisfaction. "For 10,000 years, the Federal United Worlds has maintained peace through controlled technological advancement. Species earn their place in the hierarchy through careful development and proven responsibility. And yet you couldn't stop a single human with a primitive rifle from eliminating one of your noble house's favorite sons," Sarah said, watching Grayson's fur bristle at the reminder of the Kental Station incident. "A temporary aberration," the Primox snarled. "One that will be corrected. Your species will submit its weapons technology for federal control, or what?" Sarah interrupted. "You'll take it by force. That worked so well for the outlaw bands that tried to raid our colonies." Grayson's satisfaction shifted to something darker. "Those were criminals with limited resources. I command the full might of the federal security forces. Your entire species exists because we allow it. You're making a mistake, Sarah warned. Humanity won't submit to threats. We've spent our entire history fighting against those who would dominate us. Your history, Grayson said softly, is about to change. He raised a hand, and the Grotto warriors moved forward. But before they could reach Sarah, an alarm blared through the station's communication system. Security breach in Laboratory Complex 7, an automated voice announced. Unauthorized access detected. Emergency containment protocols initiated. Sarah's blood ran cold. Laboratory 7 was where they'd stored their demonstration unit. Ah yes, Grayson's fur settled into smug patterns. I believe your chief engineer is about to have an unfortunate accident while attempting to sabotage federal property. Tragic, really. But it will give us cause to impound all your equipment for investigation. Marcus would never. Of course not, Grayson interrupted. But that's what the security footage will show. Footage that, regrettably, will be partially corrupted. Enough doubt to justify federal intervention, not enough to prove what really happened. Sarah's mind raced through options, discarding each as quickly as they formed. The station was federal territory. Any action she took could be construed as an attack on the Federal United Worlds themselves. Zaller, she said suddenly, turning to the silencist. You've studied our history. You know what happens when humans are backed into a corner. The assistant's antennae twitched. Primox, he clicked hesitantly, perhaps we should consider. Be silent, Grayson snapped. Remember your place, Bug. But Sarah had seen it, the moment of uncertainty. Not all members of the Federal United Worlds supported Grayson's vision of enforced hierarchy. Your exhibition was a success, Grayson continued, turning back to Sarah. The technology works exactly as reported. Now it belongs to those better equipped to manage it. Your choice is simple, submit willingly and receive generous compensation, or resist and watch your entire species suffer the consequences. Sarah straightened, fixing the Primox with the same steady gaze that had unsettled him in her profile image. You've studied our weapons, she said quietly. But you never bothered to understand why we developed them. Your primitive tribal conflicts are irrelevant. No, Sarah's voice hardened. They're exactly the point. Humanity doesn't develop weapons because we want to climb some arbitrary technological hierarchy. We develop them because we refuse to be dominated. Because we would rather die fighting than live under tyranny. The alarm continued to blare, but now other alerts were joining it. Security breaches in multiple sections. Communication disruptions. Power fluctuations. What have you done? Grayson demanded, his fur standing on end. Sarah smiled grimly. We're not as primitive as you think, Primox. And we never come to a fight unprepared. Part 3 continues with the unfolding crisis aboard the station, revealing the full scope of humanity's contingency plans. It explores the political fallout as other species begin to question federal authority, and shows how humanity's primitive approach to warfare proves devastating in the confined space of the station. The section ends with a major revelation that sets up the conflict for Part 4. The Reckoning. The exhibition station's emergency lighting cast everything in a blood-red glow as klaxons continued to sound throughout the structure. Primox Grayson's fur bristled with static as system after system reported failures across his command network. The two Grotto warriors flanking him shifted uncomfortably, their armor's power indicators flickering erratically. What you're experiencing, Sarah Chen explained calmly, despite being surrounded by hostile aliens, is something we call a cascade failure. Your station systems are beautifully integrated, which makes them beautifully vulnerable. Impossible, Grayson snarled, all three eyes blazing. Our cybersecurity is based on quantum encryption and neural networks, Sarah finished for him. Advanced technology that no primitive species could possibly understand, let alone compromise. Her smile was sharp as a razor. Did it ever occur to you that we might have let you underestimate us? A new alarm joined the cacophony, this one accompanied by a station-wide announcement, warning. Weapons control systems compromised. Nullifier grid failing. Emergency protocols engaged. The Grotto warriors' armor suddenly locked up, their servomotors frozen by the same cascade failure affecting the rest of the station. Graysen's fur rippled with patterns of rage and disbelief as his personal shield generator sputtered and died. Marcus Webb isn't in Laboratory 7 trying to sabotage our equipment, Sarah continued, her hand moving back to her hidden weapon. He's in Laboratory 3, plugging our AI into your mainframe. The security breach was just to get your attention. You dare, Graysen began, but Sarah cut him off. We dare because you left us no choice. Humanity tried to play by your rules. We submitted applications. We followed protocols. We demonstrated our technology openly and honestly. Her voice hardened. And you responded with threats and attempted theft. Through the station's panoramic windows, new lights began to appear against the starfield. Ships dropping out of FTL, dozens of them, their designs unlike anything in the Federal Registry. What you're seeing, Sarah nodded toward the windows, is the other reason we joined your exhibition. While everyone was focused on our railgun demonstration, no one noticed our fleet taking position outside the range of your sensor networks. Zaller's wings buzzed with agitation. These vessels don't match any known human designs. Because they're not the obsolete ships we let your scouts observe, Sarah explained. These are what we've been building in secret, deep in the frontier sectors you dismissed as worthless. Ships designed around our primitive kinetic weapons technology. Graysen's third eye widened as realization struck. The frontier colonies, they weren't failed terraforming attempts. They were shipyards, Sarah confirmed. Research facilities. Training grounds. We knew how you'd react to our technology. Your species' histories are public record, Primox. Every time you've encountered a primitive species with potentially disruptive technology, you've done exactly this, tried to seize control through threats or force. The station shuddered as more systems failed. Through the chaos, Sarah's voice remained steady. But humans don't respond well to threats. We prepare for them. We plan for them. And when backed into a corner, we fight back with everything we have. Emergency bulkheads began slamming down throughout the station as life support systems initiated containment protocols. The sound of running feet and shouted orders echoed through the corridors as federal security forces tried to respond to multiple crises simultaneously. Your entire species will pay for this treachery, Graysen threatened, though his fur betrayed his growing fear. No, Sarah's hand emerged with her kinetic pistol, a weapon that, unlike every piece of powered equipment on the station, remained perfectly functional. Your corruption will be exposed. Right now, every delegate on this station is receiving proof of your attempted theft, your threats, and your long history of suppressing technological advancement that threatens federal control. Through the windows, more ships were appearing, but these weren't human vessels. The distinctive organic curves of Zist ships mixed with the crystalline structures of other species craft, taking up defensive positions alongside the human fleet. Did you think we were the only ones tired of federal corruption? Sarah asked softly. The only ones who've had our technological advancement stifled because it didn't fit your approved development path? We've spent the last 5 years building alliances with other species you've dismissed as inferior. Graysen's fur lay flat against his body, a sign of utter shock in his species. The Zist, the frontier worlds, are ready for change, Zaller spoke up, his wings finally relaxing from their tight fold. The Federation was meant to guide species toward peaceful cooperation, not enforce artificial hierarchies. This isn't just about human weapons technology anymore, Sarah declared. This is about breaking the corrupt power structure that you and your fellow Primox have used to control galactic development. Our demonstration today wasn't just about railguns, it was about showing every species that your technological superiority is an illusion. Part 4 continues with the unfolding revolution aboard the station, as various species representatives side with either the humans or the federal forces. It explores the larger political implications of the humans' secret preparations and alliances, while building toward the final confrontation. The section ends with a major revelation about the true extent of humanity's technological advancement, setting up the final part of the story. The New Order. The exhibition station's Grand Council chamber had never been designed to hold this many species at once. 3 weeks after what historians would later call the exhibition incident, representatives from over 50 worlds crowded the tiered seating. Species that had once been relegated to the fringes of federal space now sat alongside the traditional powers, their voices equal in the chaos of reformation. Sarah Chen stood at the speaker's podium, her primitive, kinetic pistol still holstered at her side, a reminder to all present of how thoroughly humanity had shattered the old paradigms of power. Behind her, a holographic display showed the ongoing changes sweeping through federal space, trade routes being redrawn, technology sharing agreements being forged, and most significantly, the dismantling of the Federal United World's technological certification system. The age of artificial hierarchies is over, Sarah announced to the assembled delegates. The evidence recovered from Primox Graysen's personal archives has exposed centuries of systematic suppression. Species deemed primitive had their innovations stolen, their developments restricted, and their growth stunted, all in the name of maintaining order. In a containment cell 20 levels below, Graysen himself watched the proceedings on a simple video screen. His once luminous fur had dulled to a patchy gray, his third eye nearly closed in perpetual exhaustion. The former Primox had aged decades in mere weeks as the full scope of humanity's victory became clear. But order based on suppression was always destined to fail, Sarah continued. Real stability comes from cooperation, from allowing each species to develop along their natural path while sharing knowledge freely. A Grotto noble rose from his seat, his armor now stripped of the gaudy decorations that had once marked his house's status. And what prevents this new freedom from descending into chaos? What stops dangerous technologies from spreading to those unprepared to wield them? Sarah smiled. The same thing that guided humanity's development of kinetic weapons, necessity and responsibility. We didn't develop railguns because we wanted to dominate others. We developed them because we needed to defend ourselves, and we did so according to our own cultural values and understanding of physics. Zaller, now serving as the interim representative of the newly independent Zist worlds, buzzed his wings in agreement. Each species approaches problems differently. The Federation's mistake was assuming there was only one correct path of technological advancement. Exactly, Sarah nodded. Humans pursued kinetic weapons because they suited our understanding of physics and our tactical needs. The Zist developed organic technology that would have revolutionized medicine, if the Federation hadn't classified it as deviant advancement and suppressed it. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Other species began sharing their own stories of innovations deemed inappropriate or premature by federal authorities. But what of the nullifiers? Another delegate called out. Your weapons render our primary peacekeeping technology obsolete. No, Sarah corrected, they exposed its limitations. The Federation relied too heavily on a single type of technology, energy-based weapons and defenses. That's like trying to win a war with only one tactic. Humanity's history has taught us the value of diverse approaches. The holographic display shifted to show the new defense treaties being implemented across federal space. Under the new system, species would share their unique technological innovations while maintaining their cultural approaches to development. The Zist's organic technology, combined with human kinetic principles, has already led to breakthroughs in medical delivery systems, Sarah explained. Grotto metallurgy, freed from artificial restrictions, is revolutionizing spacecraft design. And this is just the beginning. She gestured to the display, where the former federal territories were being reorganized into cooperative zones rather than hierarchical sectors. 3 weeks ago, I stood in this station demonstrating weapons that many of you dismissed as primitive. Today, I'm announcing the formation of the Galactic Cooperative for Technological Advancement, an organization dedicated to fostering innovation across all species, without artificial restrictions or predetermined paths. The chamber erupted in discussion, but Sarah wasn't finished. Humanity didn't come to the exhibition seeking dominance. We came seeking change. The very qualities that the Federation mocked, our primitive approach to physics, our chaotic development of technology, our stubborn resistance to control, these were actually our greatest strengths. In his cell, Grayson watched as everything he had believed in crumbled. The perfect order he had helped maintain for centuries was being replaced by something messier, more dynamic, but ultimately more viable. The old Federation feared change, Sarah's voice carried through his speakers. They saw different approaches to technology as threats rather than opportunities. But the universe is too vast, too complex, for any one path to be the right path. The display showed new ships emerging from the former frontier shipyards, vessels that combined human kinetic weapons with Zist organic computing and grotto metallurgy. They were unlike anything the galaxy had seen before, a physical representation of what cooperation between species could achieve. We stand at a crossroads, Sarah declared. We can cling to the old hierarchies, the comfortable illusion of controlled progress. Or we can embrace the chaos of true innovation, where every species contributes their unique perspective to our shared advancement. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Centuries of carefully maintained order were giving way to something new, something unpredictable but filled with potential. Part 5 concludes with the establishment of the new galactic order, showing how different species begin working together in ways the old Federation never allowed. It explores the personal implications for key characters, including Grayson's ultimate fate and the new relationships forged between formerly divided species. The story ends with a look toward the future, where humanity's primitive approach helps usher in an unprecedented era of innovation and cooperation.